The blue and red lights painted the grocery store parking lot in trembling colors. Shoppers slowed their carts. A little boy clutched his mother's coat, and in the center stood Vanessa Reed, one hand gripping her purse, the other on her 8-year-old daughter's shoulder. She hadn't stolen anything, she hadn't argued, she had only asked why she was being stopped. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Vanessa was used to balancing the weight of the world alone. 2 jobs, PTA meetings, rent that seemed to rise. Her daughter Layla was her heartbeat, the reason she pushed through exhaustion every single day. But tonight exhaustion felt different. It felt dangerous. Officer Grant stood in front of her cruiser, arms folded. His partner lingered behind him, watchful, skeptical. They had followed Vanessa out of the store after a cashier reported a suspicious customer. No evidence, just suspicion. "Ma'am, we're going to need to check your bag," Grant said, his tone clipped. Vanessa swallowed. People were staring. Phones hovered subtly at chest height. The wind carried the faint scent of gasoline and autumn rain. "I paid for everything," she replied, keeping her voice calm for Layla's sake. Grant didn't soften. "If you've got nothing to hide, this won't take long." The words weren't loud, but they carried implication, judgment, presumption. Layla's small fingers tightened around her mother's coat. Vanessa felt the tremble. That tremble mattered more than her pride. Inside, a war raged. Part of her wanted to shout, to demand respect. Another part whispered caution. Escalation would only make things worse. She had seen how quickly situations could spiral, so she nodded and opened her purse. Lipstick, wallet, receipts neatly folded. Nothing else. Grant's jaw tightened, not with apology but irritation. He hadn't found what he expected. "Well," he muttered, "you matched a description." Vanessa exhaled slowly. "What description?" Neither officer answered directly. The crowd's silence pressed in. Some people looked uncomfortable, others simply watched. Watching was easier than intervening. Vanessa's phone buzzed in her hand. It was a reminder notification: "Call Marcus." She had set it weeks ago, meaning to check in on her older brother, Marcus Reed. To the world, he was Colonel Marcus Reed, commander of an elite Delta Force unit, decorated, disciplined, feared by enemies. To Vanessa, he was simply her big brother, the one who carried her backpack when she was too tired to walk home. She hesitated. Calling him felt dramatic, childish, even. She was an adult, a mother. She could handle this, but Layla's trembling hadn't stopped. Vanessa dialed across the country, inside a quiet office on a secure base. Marcus stared at a map with coordinates. His phone rarely rang with personal calls. When he saw Vanessa's name, he answered immediately. Her voice was steady but too steady. "Hey Marcus," she said softly. "I'm okay, but I need advice." He listened, not interrupting, not reacting. When she finished, he asked only one question: "Are you safe?" "Yes, stay where you are." 10 minutes later, the sound of a black SUV pulling into the lot shifted the atmosphere. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it carried presence. Marcus stepped out wearing civilian clothes, jeans, jacket, posture straight as a drawn blade. He didn't rush, he walked. Officer Grant glanced over, annoyance flickering. "Sir, this is police business." Marcus nodded calmly. "I'm aware." He stopped beside Vanessa and Layla, placing a reassuring hand on his niece's shoulder. "My name is Marcus Reed," he said evenly. "I understand you detained my sister without cause." There was no shouting, no threats, only certainty. Grant scoffed lightly. "We're conducting a routine investigation." Marcus studied him, not aggressively, but thoroughly. Years of leadership had taught him to read men in seconds. Fear, ego, insecurity. It was all there. "Routine requires reasonable suspicion," Marcus replied. "May I ask what law was broken?" The second officer shifted uncomfortably. Bystanders leaned closer. Grant stiffened. "We don't answer to civilians." Marcus's expression didn't change. "No, you answer to the law." He reached into his jacket slowly, not for intimidation, but for identification. A government-issued badge and credentials flashed briefly under the parking lot lights. The shift was immediate. Grant's tone cooled. "Sir, we didn't realize that my sister deserved respect." Marcus interrupted gently. The question hung in the air. Moral tension settled over the scene. Some in the crowd wondered if Marcus's authority was the only reason the tone had changed. Was respect conditional? Was dignity only protected when power stood behind it? Marcus seemed to sense the unspoken question. "She shouldn't need me here," he said quietly. "She did nothing wrong." The simplicity of it landed harder than anger would have. Grant glanced around at the watching crowd. For the first time, uncertainty crept into his stance. "We were responding to a report," he muttered. "And you responded," Marcus replied. Now respond correctly. There was no humiliation, no revenge, only accountability. After a tense pause, Grant cleared his throat. Ma'am, you're free to go. It wasn't a full apology, but it was a retreat. Vanessa felt something loosen inside her chest. Not victory, but validation. She hadn't imagined the bias. She hadn't overreacted. She had simply existed. As the police cars pulled away, the crowd slowly dispersed. A few people offered quiet nods of solidarity. One woman squeezed Vanessa's hand. Layla looked up at her uncle. Are you like a superhero? Marcus smiled faintly. No, your mom is. Vanessa laughed softly, tears threatening but controlled. Strength didn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes it looked like restraint, like choosing calm when anger would be easier. Later that night, as they sat around Vanessa's small kitchen table, the tension faded into warmth. Marcus listened as Layla recounted every detail with dramatic flair. Vanessa watched her brother closely. You didn't yell, she said. He shrugged. Real power doesn't need to. She thought about that long after he left. The world hadn't transformed overnight. Prejudice hadn't vanished, but something had shifted inside her. She realized she didn't need to shrink to survive, because here's the truth. Dignity is not granted by authority, it is inherent in every human being, and when courage stands calm in the face of injustice, even the loudest arrogance begins to quiet. If this story moved you, tell me where you're watching from and share your thoughts below, and subscribe to Cinematic Whispers for more powerful stories that remind your strength isn't about fear, it's about standing firm when it matters most.